Hey humans, it's Hannah. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a really bizarre case that I would bet that most of you have actually never heard of. You may not have heard of Max Spiers yourself, but in conspiracy theory circles, he was very well known. Max Spiers was a very hardcore conspiracy theorist himself, dedicated his entire life to it, and then he passed away under very, very mysterious circumstances. Days before his death, he had warned his mother that he might be murdered soon. The day after he died, Max was reportedly supposed to go to a conference to speak about a pedo ring that he had uncovered. While he was dying, he vomited up a concerning amount, 2 liters of black liquid. And then authorities almost immediately ruled his death natural causes, with authorities also allegedly refusing to release the details of their investigation to Max's own mother. Plus, after he passed, his laptop and his phone were seemingly wiped. All of the things I told you are 100% true. However, there is a lot more to this mystery. Let's unravel it together and see if we can get to the bottom of it. This is the mysterious death of conspiracy theorist Max Spiers.
Yes. So somebody, with their head in their hands crying is, the energy is called Loosh, Loosh, and it's very, very high powered energy.
He just shows that, yeah, like they couldn't hijack him. They couldn't possess him to work for the dark agenda.
Keep on saying this belief system. If you're actually in a program and you're actually with other children exposed to different military conditions by other elements who are in control, then that's not a belief system. That's happened to you in your life.
I could not make videos without support from sponsors. Please excuse the tone shift, but I will be right back. Okay, so this is a 100% true story. I was waiting for the light rail with my friend a few weeks back. We were on our way back from something and we were just chatting about aging. We were talking about how being in your 30s is so different than what you imagine as a kid. And my friend turns to me and I'm dead serious. She goes, "Have you ever thought about the fact that we're just as close to 20 as we are to 50? I looked at her, my flabbers were gasted. I open mouth, jaw on the floor. I was so mad. I took it so personally and I was like, girl, that is such a rude thing to say. It is a privilege to age, but of course it doesn't make it any less scary. But I am at that age where I really need to start paying attention to my health. I'm 34 now. So whether it's a weird new backache, maybe you have a weird mole that you've been meaning to get checked out, or maybe you just haven't gotten a basic checkup in 3 years. It's more important than ever to find a good doctor because remember, you will never be as young as you are in this exact moment. And that is where today's sponsor, Zocdoc, comes in. They make finding a doctor at any stage of life easier than ever. It's where I go every time I need to find a new provider, and I highly recommend that you all do too. Zocdoc is a free website where you can easily search and compare high quality in-network doctors so you can find the right doctor for you. Whether you're looking for somebody in network, nearby, or with special appointment times, Zocdoc can help you quickly find the right doctor for your needs with no guesswork and also no phone calls needed. Plus, with Zocdoc, you get verified patient reviews as well as detailed doctor profiles. Without going anywhere else, just on Zocdoc, you can see the doctor's real actual appointment openings. You choose a time and a day that works for you and you can instantly book the appointment within minutes. Zocdoc appointments also happen really fast, often within 24 to 72 hours of booking. And sometimes, depending on the appointment, you can even score a same-day appointment. Zocdoc is not just for one type of care either. They have over 100,000 providers across nearly every specialty. This one website is really just your one-stop shop for all things healthcare. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to Zocdoc.com/HannahTheHorrible. This will also be in the description right below this video to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. Thank you again to Zocdoc for being an amazing sponsor of my channel. Now let's get into the video. Okay, so not a lot is actually known about Max's early life and his life in general. I know that his full name was Maxwell Bates Spiers. He grew up and lived in Canterbury in the UK. He was born in 1976 and he was 39 years old when he passed away on July 16th, 2016. We also know that he was a father to 2 boys. Max's mother described him as extremely funny and full of life. I want to make it very clear from the beginning of this video that no matter what the circumstances of his death was, no matter what the actual truth is, his death was awful. It was a tragedy, and he did not deserve to lose his life. I cannot imagine the pain that his mother, his friends, his family, everybody who knew him went through when he passed away, especially because at first they got no answers. I cannot imagine the complicated grief that would cause. As we go through this video in as much detail as I could find, the point of this video is to talk about all the details that conspiracy theorists seem to leave out. There's a lot more to his death than a lot of people in his circles want us to know about or believe. But even though I am trying to shed light and figure out what really happened and kind of go beyond the sensationalization that conspiracy theorists tend to promote, I just want to say that does not mean that I don't think Max's life was super important. That doesn't mean I think he deserved any of this. And him losing his life was still a great loss and a tragedy. I just don't want my debunking of a lot of things and me looking at this rationally and going through as many details as I could. I didn't want that to come off as a disrespect of any kind, or like I don't understand the gravity of what really happened. Like, this was a human who lost his life way, way too young at the end of the day. Now, Max's death is a very touchy topic for conspiracy theorists. Go to any video about him talking the way I'm going to talk in this video, and you will see comment after comment of conspiracy theorists, people who knew him, people who knew of him, coming in and being like, Max was a truth teller. He was not a conspiracy theorist. We, us simpletons, know nothing about this. We know nothing, and they know the truth about what really happened to Max. I do not agree with people who say stuff like that. I think it's absolutely ridiculous to perpetuate conspiracy theories when you have absolutely zero evidence or proof to back yourself up, and the things that you're saying don't even sound plausible. We'll talk about that more later, but just wanted to warn you all, there's probably going to be some really mad people in the comments. If there's not, come back in a few days and the wrong type of people will find this video, and I'm sure they'll leave comments there. So all that being out of the way and knowing a little bit about his background and the kind of person that he was, let's talk about the darker sides of Max. Max was a hardcore conspiracy theorist. In fact, it was his life's work. He was a journalist and wrote about conspiracies. He talked a lot about UFOs, a lot about government cover-ups, and a lot about other paranormal conspiracies that he had. In fact, Max was sure he didn't even think this was a belief. This is something that happened to him, that he was born a super soldier. A super soldier is a human with non-human abilities, kind of like a superhero. Max believed that he was part of the super soldier program, where while he was still in the womb, some sort of extraterrestrial being altered with his mind to give him super abilities, to give him superpowers, other abilities. It's kind of unclear.
So essentially I was born into a specific bloodline, and I was targeted as an individual. Okay, so I was targeted as an individual from birth. The trauma begins with me. The trauma began whilst in the womb of the mother.
What did Max think happened to him when he was a child?
Max was part of a group of children, about 40 children, who were treated in very special ways.
Okay, here Miles is talking about the super soldier program that Max thought he was part of. Max believed that his mind had been altered as a fetus and could be controlled to fight in other dimensions.
But they were being trained to survive an enemy that they needed to be able to conquer, and that's what he was fighting.
That's quite a big thing to believe happened to you when you were a child.
So you keep on saying this belief system. If you're actually in a program and you're actually with other children, exposed to different military conditions by other elements who are in control, then that's not a belief system. That's happened to you in your life.
So people such as Max think that they were born with these abilities and that they were part of a program where multiple children were born like this, and they're part of this little club that none of us know about. The problem is we have no evidence that Max could do anything superhuman. If he was a super soldier, theoretically he should be able to prove it, but he had never been able to show anyone or anything or prove it to anybody that he had any sort of abilities that weren't just human. Max did struggle with his mental health, which I don't think would be a surprise to most of you after hearing that clip. His mom said that he suffered from anxiety, like sometimes debilitating anxiety. Given the fact that he truly, truly believes that he's a super soldier who was altered in the womb, I would personally call that a delusion. I don't know about you, but I would say that he suffered from delusions. I think a lot of conspiracy theorists do, though, in my personal opinion. But with that, I cannot say for sure that he had other mental health issues other than anxiety, because there was no proof of that, or nobody in his life really saying that he did. No, like, good sources saying that he did. His mom didn't say anything about that. But I am speculating that there might have been something else going on, given all these delusions and these odd things that he truly, truly believed. There was somebody who knew Max, who was supposedly spending time with him right before he died, who had written to some other conspiracy theorists, like some tarot psychic reader person, who they were trying to get help for Max because they could see that he wasn't doing very well. And in that letter to this psychic, they told this person that Max was suffering from paranoid schizophrenia as well as a personality disorder. But the reason I say that we can't confirm that is because this was through several channels of somebody who said this. We don't have it from the actual horse's mouth or anything like that. This was part of the BBC series about this, where they knew a person who was writing to a person who leaked the emails, like that kind of thing. Quite far removed from confirming that that was actually true. So we can only speculate. Here's another clip from this same talk that you just saw a few minutes ago. This was from the Earth Project conference, supposedly, that took place in April of 2016 in Poland. This would have been a few months before Max passes away. And again, like, I just want you to get an idea of the kinds of thoughts that he had. I'm not going to play too much of it because honestly, I watched this entire video and it is like a lot of people suffering from delusions or conspiracy theorists. They're saying a whole lot of word salad, but it doesn't make sense if you really listen to it. Like, it does not make any sense whatsoever. But I think it gives you kind of a good idea of just how deep he was into this.
It's essentially about the higher reptilian DNA. So this king, the higher the reptilian DNA, the more reptilian characteristics they display. So it's more about dominance, control, and conquering. Dominance and conquering. That is to reinforce into the mind of the people that 3D is all there is. There are certain hotels throughout the planet. For example, the Hilton Hotel chain. You can go to a Hilton Hotel and you can stay in a specific room. Numbers resonate energy. Colors resonate energy. So you go to, say, room 384. And when you go in that room and you go to sleep at night in that room, and then say somebody else is sleeping in a city 100 miles away in room 184, then they go to sleep and then they are able to link energetically into 4D and have their meeting that way. To take control and build externally. So it's transhumanistic. It's technology. So they want to take over using technology and turn human beings into transhuman beings. So to disconnect us from the heart completely, and that way then they can finally take control of this planet, link it up to all the other prison planets, and then have a one whole prison system.
Just a note about that conference. I can't find this conference anywhere. I can't find any evidence that it was ever actually put on. I can't find any evidence for ones coming up in the future. I put everything into Google to try to find this conference, a reference to this conference, their website, something, and I could find nothing. I looked up Earth Project Conference, Poland, Project Earth Conference, Poland, April 2016. I did it in Polish, in the Polish language, Project Earth. I did the Super Soldier Conference because Max has that in his presentation at one point, and nothing comes up. Could not find anything. So if I am wrong and somebody else can find the website, but mostly just like other climate change and environmental conferences came up when you looked up anything like that. So I don't know. I suspect that since Max passed away, they just don't do the conference anymore and they deleted the website or whatever. That's a possibility. Or perhaps they are the type of conspiracy theorists where they don't want that on the internet. They don't want normies going. They don't want people outside of their circles to go. So they don't have a website. It's like a need to know basis thing that if you're in the circles, you know where to go and what time. And then if you don't, you don't. Those are my guesses of why I can't find anything online, but just an interesting side note. He goes on some weird transphobic and sexist rants as well, even though he doesn't think he's being transphobic or sexist. But he goes on this big rant about how the government is secretly feminizing men and using Caitlyn Jenner as an example. I worry so much about people that are consumed by this kind of stuff because they truly, truly believe this. You guys, we could sit here and laugh at them. We could sit here and just laugh at how ridiculous it all sounds, but there is a giant group of, it's not funny because there is a giant group of people that actually genuinely believe this. It's so concerning. And what's more concerning is that they truly believe they are the enlightened ones. They believe they know all this stuff that we don't, and we're just all dumb. Okay, and then another really important aspect to point out is that when Max took a trip to the United States, and I couldn't find details about this trip or like what year he took it, it doesn't really matter. He went to the United States, he fell, he had an accident, and he broke a piece of his pelvic bone. In the hospital in the US, he was, as people so often are in the US, prescribed opioids for the pain. I'm sure you could see where this is going because if you don't know, if you don't live in the US, we are responsible for a lot of heroin addicts because our healthcare system was doling out opioids like candy for many years there and getting a lot of people addicted to them. And then when they couldn't get the prescription, they would go to the street stuff. And so this is a very, very common pattern for the United States. Opioids, they are something that is needed in some cases. I have needed opioids in the past for my chronic illness and everything. But when people are prescribed them for a long period of time, they can become dependent on them. It does happen. And it's so sad. We've only in recent years began to realize this and start to pull back, and things are changing. But a lot of the damage has already been done. And unfortunately, Max was a victim of this crisis as well. So just like so many victims before him, Max got addicted to these opioids. And then when he couldn't get prescriptions anymore, because doctors don't just hand these out for no reason, when he couldn't get a prescription anymore, he turned to heroin, which throughout this video, I will also be referring to as just H, just censoring for YouTube. I know we all hate it, but if I say H, that's what I'm talking about. But Max became then addicted to street H because of this addiction. He was reportedly a very, very heavy user, at least at one point, where he was a daily user of both H as well as cocaine and, of course, other substances and alcohol. Another thing is, we just talked about Max's mental health. Another thing to note is that we know that people with mental illnesses or mental health disorders are also just statistically more likely to become addicted to substances as well. So this is just another tragedy within the tragedy, but unfortunately not shocking. His friend, Miles, when interviewed by the BBC, claimed that Max's drug use and drug addiction was all by design. That these extraterrestrial beings that put him in the super soldier program and altered his brain from the womb also inflicted him with an addiction so that these beings could turn it on and off at will in order to control Max.
It's called trauma-induced mind control. You put the individual into a state of trauma through their normal personality, basically wants to get out of that trauma. It wants to kill the pain. And once that happens, bingo, you shatter the individual's personality, and then the person who's done that can control that. You can have a couple of hundred different personalities.
There's no way that it's just his mental health, and something that happens to so many people when they go to the hospital, especially in the United States. They form an opioid addiction. Couldn't be that. Couldn't be the fact that he had mental health issues, anxiety, possibly suffering from something else. Nah, it was the super soldier program. according to his friend Miles. It's okay. So now let's talk about Max's actual death. That's really all we know about his background and him as a person. I also just want to point out that the timeline of this is confusing and the sources are also confusing. There's not a ton of info about Max out there, actually, and the sources that we have all seem to have either errors or a lot of them just don't seem to be conveying the same information as each other. After reading so many of them, reading almost everything out there that there is to know about publicly anyway about this case, I was able to piece together what I believe the timeline is and what I believe happened. But please excuse me if I say like I'm pretty sure it's this or the source said this, because I don't want to also say this with such confidence if I'm wrong or if one of the sources that I got this from is wrong. I will link all the sources in the description as well for this video. So April 2016, Max travels from the UK to Poland for this conference that we were talking about earlier, the Project Earth conference, the mysterious conference that doesn't actually seem to exist. But that was the one that Max was speaking at in the clip as well. That was April 2016. At the conference, he meets a fellow conspiracy theorist named Monica Duval. It's either Duval or Duval. I do apologize if I am saying her last name wrong, but the two hit it off. Max and Monica became friends very quickly. After the conference in April, Monica tells Max that, hey, don't fly home. Stay here with me. Monica tells Max that he's welcome to stay with her at her place for like indefinitely. It was very, very odd. Max checks out of the hotel that he was staying at for the conference and Monica picks him up, and sure enough, he starts living at Monica's house. All very odd considering Max has children at home. Granted, I don't know how old the children are, and I'm not judging because I don't know their family circumstance. I don't know what's going on there, but just kind of odd that he can just drop everything and be like, okay, I'll just stay in another country while my children are at home and while my entire life is back home. But again, like I said, I don't know all the circumstances around what led to that decision. The nature of Monica and Max's relationship is also weird and unclear. All Monica said about their relationship is that they had an informal relationship. Some articles refer to them as friends. Some articles refer to them as partners, like, romantic partners. Monica says informal relationship. We don't know the nature of their relationship. Again, if I were to guess based on what I know of this case, I would guess that they were romantically involved, if you know what I mean, but not super serious, like more like friends with benefits kind of thing is my guess, my speculation. So Max is staying with Monica for weeks, and weeks turn into months. From June 27th to July 11th, 2016, Max and Monica take a trip to Cyprus together. While on this trip to Cyprus, Max buys 8 to 10 boxes of the Turkish version of Xanax. He brings all this Xanax back to Poland with him, and he bought it there because you don't need a prescription in Cyprus for Xanax. Now, it is also important to note that as far as everybody else in Max's life knew, at this time, Max was sober, which is odd and concerning because according to his mother, as far as she knew and everybody else in Max's life knew, they thought that he was clean. They thought that he had stopped doing these recreational substances altogether, and he was clean, but it is speculated that he relapsed while in Poland. A few days before his death, Max texted his mother saying, "If anything happens to me, investigate." He also allegedly told her that he feared he would be murdered soon. According to Monica, Max had also been complaining of, quote, satanic cults that were after him and stalking him. So then on July 16th, Max takes some Xanax. And he, of course, fell asleep on Monica's couch shortly afterwards. If you don't know, Xanax definitely makes you very, very sleepy. But hours later, Monica, walks by to check on Max. He's on her couch, and she notices that he was not breathing. She supposedly started resuscitation efforts, but quickly noticed that there was something in his mouth. She said it looked like food of some sort. And so she starts to try to get the food out of his mouth, and Max starts vomiting what she described as a very, very dark liquid. It's often described as a straight up black liquid. And according to Monica, he threw up over 2 liters of it. Paramedics arrived, and apparently the paramedics and even a doctor showed up to the scene, and they were there for hours trying to resuscitate Max, but unfortunately he didn't make it. He died on the scene. They didn't even take him to the hospital. Another weird part of this whole thing is that Max's mom, Vanessa is Max's mom's name. According to her, when Monica had called her to let her know that Max had passed away, Vanessa said she heard other people in the background. Vanessa said that she heard other people in the house, even though the paramedics had gone. They hadn't taken his body yet. In fact, Max's body wasn't picked up until the next morning. Like, it was just there overnight, even though he was already gone. And Vanessa said that she heard other people in the house in the background, but as far as we know, we don't have any other witnesses. All we know is that they did end up interviewing Monica afterwards, but Monica won't talk to anybody else. The BBC tried to knock on Monica's door, and she wanted nothing to do with it. She won't answer the door. She won't answer requests for comments or anything like that. She only talked to police because, of course, she had to. So we kind of know, or we kind of think that there was other people in the house during this time and that this all went down, but we don't know who, we don't know how many people, like, we just don't know. It's very, very odd. This is all according to Max's mom. Now, I will admit that the Polish authorities completely dropped the ball on this investigation and on this case. They did a horrible job. First of all, the fact that they just left his body there, nobody came and got him until the next morning, is bizarre to me. That is possible, though, that's just because I'm in America, where we wouldn't typically do that, and maybe just in other countries that is not as uncommon. They basically did a very, very preliminary surface level investigation, is my understanding. They determined that Max died from natural causes suspiciously quickly after he died without an autopsy. They just said that he died from natural causes, and they closed the case. They were like, it's fine. This is already awful when authorities don't investigate. It's already extremely frustrating when they just don't want to deal with it, when they can't be bothered with something so big, like somebody losing their life. But in this particular case, it was like that made it all 10 times worse, because this is what conspiracy theorists look for, right? Like, this heightens all the conspiracy theorists and what they already think. This is confirmation for them that something shady is going on. But especially in this case, this did not help matters, because of course people that knew Max then, conspiracy theorists, were like, okay, so this is really shady. And I will admit, it is. It's very weird that the authorities didn't really want to do an investigation, even though it was so clearly not just natural causes. If someone dies suddenly like this when they're relatively young and healthy, it makes absolutely no sense to not do an investigation and an autopsy. They also declared that there was no indications of foul play very quickly. Again, suspiciously quickly. Max's remains were then shipped back to the UK 6 days after he died. And Max's family was advised not to view the actual body because it had been decomposing for 6 days. They didn't preserve it or anything like that, I guess. So it was decomposing for quite a while, and he was allegedly unrecognizable at this point. So his family did not look at his actual body. They did have photos, though. And of course, we don't have these photos. We wouldn't look at them anyway. But one of the BBC journalists said that she did see the photo, and she described Max's face as having a big mark on the center of his forehead. She described it as a blood blister. So she did say there was a strange mark on his forehead. But also remember, he had been decomposing for 6 days. So just something to note.
I've been shown a picture by Vanessa of Max's dead body. And on his forehead is this large, strange, sort of dark mark about the size of my thumb. It looks a bit like a blood blister. But I've seen the emergency services notes, and there isn't any record of that. And there's no record of any injury to Max at all.
Now, in August 2016, about a month later, Polish authorities did launch an investigation. They did open it back up and launched an investigation. I don't know why they suddenly did that after marking it natural causes and no foul play. I believe that it's because Max's circle of conspiracy theorists, probably more his family, because the conspiracy theorists are going to think it's a conspiracy no matter what the investigation's finds because they don't trust anybody who does the investigations. But I believe it was because Max's family really wanted an investigation done, and I believe there was an uproar. I don't know for sure, though. Either way, Polish authorities did decide they were going to go back and investigate this in August. However, it was British authorities who, in December of 2016, decided that they were going to open an inquest into Max's death. An inquest, if you don't know, is also an investigation into somebody's death. It's specifically aimed to find the cause of death for somebody, but they're not looking to arrest anybody. So basically, they don't believe that there was criminal activity at play or that it was some sort of murder or foul play. They are just doing a big investigation to try to figure out what happened. It is through the court system, so family and friends can attend and see what the findings are, and there is like a lot of processes and legal stuff that go into it. Sometimes an autopsy is involved, but sometimes it's not, depending on the circumstance. In this case, the coroner did get involved. I believe they did actually end up doing an autopsy on Max later. As many sources were saying, there was a post-mortem exam, so I can only imagine that means they did actually do an autopsy. That's typically what a post-mortem exam is. However, inquests are slow, as all things in the court system are, so it took years to complete. It wasn't done until 2019. So, to recap, Max, super hardcore conspiracy theorist, believed that he was a super soldier altered in the womb. He also suffered from at least anxiety. That's the only thing that we really know of. I can speculate other stuff, but I don't know. He suffered from drug addiction, and then he died under all these weird circumstances. Additionally, like I said at the beginning, Vanessa, Max's mom, claims that when she got his laptop and his phone back, she said the SIM card was missing from his phone and his laptop had been almost completely wiped. Another just really, really odd thing that she just doesn't understand. We're going to talk about that more in a few minutes. First, we need to go back a little bit and I need to fill in all the blanks that I have been purposely leading out so far. Like I said, the inquest took years. It wasn't until 2019 where it was finally finished and they made an official determination of Max's cause of death. And I've kind of been withholding information and kind of going with like, that's everything we knew in 2016. Now let's shift to everything we know after the investigation and the inquest. So remember when I said that Max took Xanax the day that he died? Well, it's not like he took one pill. He allegedly took like 10 Xanax. The coroner said that he had twice the therapeutic dose in his system. Monica claimed that Max had told her that he needed to take more Xanax because the dosing conversion was different. The dosing conversion from Turkey was different than in Polish or what he knew. Like their dosing of the pills was different. So he had to take more to get the same dose he usually got. That's not good. That's not a good thing to do. What if he messed up the conversion and took way more than he meant to? So that's already enough to be like, oh, he overdosed on Xanax, right? No. It gets so much worse. Turns out the coroner also found that Max had oxycodone in his system. I know that we just talked about how he was an H addict, but remember, he was sober when he left for Poland. As far as mom knew, he was completely sober. So it's speculated, although it's pretty obvious, that he must have relapsed.
I was just telling myself I never heard that word before.
Baz? Wake up.
I'm here. I'm thinking.
You said you didn't know the word buzz.
No.
Bees make buzz.
Buzz. They make buzz, not baz. That's all. Buzz, baz. Vowels are interchangeable. Yes. Buzz. Okay. Where did you get? Buzzing. Where did you get buzz or baz from?
The coroner found that the amount of oxycodone in his system was enough to be fatal for an inexperienced user. Now, I know a lot of you guys are thinking, but he's not an inexperienced user. How could that much hurt him when he's so used to this? Well, the answer to that is that because it was likely his relapse. A lot of you probably know this, but some of you probably don't. But opioid addiction has this whole other side of tragedy to it, and it's why so many people often overdose and pass away from it. And that is because when you're an active user, your body builds a tolerance to it. So as time goes on, as you use it more, you need more and more of the substance to feel anything. A lot of the time you're doing it just to get back to your base level. It's very scary stuff. This is why it's so dangerous. So a lot of people build up a tolerance to it, but then when they stop doing whatever the substance is, especially opioids and things like H, maybe they go to prison for a while, so they don't do it for a while. Maybe they go to rehab because they're trying to quit. Whatever it is, they've detoxed their body. They've gone through all the withdrawal symptoms. They get it all out. But then, as we know, relapse is a very common occurrence. So when somebody who has this terrible addiction, when they relapse, they don't know the right dose to take. They can often take what they used to take. They often take the same amount that they did back when they were a regular user. But that was fine because their tolerance was so high. Now their tolerance went back to 0 when they went through withdrawal. By the way, this is not medical advice. I am not a doctor. Keep that in mind. But it is common for people to then really easily overdose right after relapse because their tolerance went back to base level. So that in itself could have killed Max. But then we have the added layer of, we know that there was twice the therapeutic dose of Xanax in his system. Xanax is a benzodiazepine, often referred to as just a benzo. And if you don't know, benzodiazepines and opioids should never, ever, ever be mixed in any way, shape, or form. This is what got Heath Ledger. This is what has gotten a lot of other celebrities. Those two, benzos and opioids mixed together, they are both central nervous system suppressants, and both of them will slow down your breathing and often stop it. Mixing these is so dangerous because it does stop people's breathing because of what it does. It's so scary. But then, I'm not even kidding, it's even worse. The inquest also determined that Max was suffering from pneumonia when all this happened. He was sick. He just had a regular illness on top of everything else. He had pneumonia, which also affects your breathing. He had pneumonia, plus he mixed a benzo and an opioid and had all of that in his system at the same time. Honestly, it would have been a miracle if Max had survived this episode. So then on top of all of that, Mom also had this weird claim at first that the authorities wouldn't release the initial investigation papers that the Polish authorities had to her without Max's written consent, which obviously makes no sense because Max passed away, and that was very confusing for Mom as well. So Max's official cause of death was pneumonia and Xanax overdose, but of course this was not good enough for the conspiracy theorists. Everybody in Max's inner circles, all the conspiracy theorists, just absolutely did not believe that this is what happened, believe it's all a cover-up, and still to this day, most of them still do not believe the investigation. And a lot of them believe that Max was killed because he was about to out a pedo ring. Sorry, there's so many details, but he was supposedly the day after he died supposed to go to another conference, remember, because there was this weird pedo ring that he knew about that he was going to expose at this conference. And so they still believe that that was the reason that somebody came to get him, because they knew that he was going to expose this. Conspiracy theorists are also like, why did the Polish authorities cover this up? Why won't they release the documents to Mom? Why was he throwing up black liquid? Why was his computer wiped? So let's go through all of this, right? And see if we can't debunk every single point that conspiracy theorists have to make. Polish authorities not letting Mom see the investigation and trying to make it natural causes and like cover everything up really fast. Is it possible, and more likely, that the Polish authorities just dropped the ball? Police departments drop the ball all the time. They do this shit all the time. Yes, the Polish authorities, they were sloppy in this case. They did not do their job. And to me, I just think, is this just a case where they really mishandled stuff? It feels like more often than not, police do a bad job at investigating stuff. And then with them not releasing the papers to Mom, I do believe that. Like, I do believe that they said no. But to me, it's like the more likely scenario is that they don't want to get sued. They don't want a lawsuit on their hand, and they know that their initial investigation looked really, really bad because they obviously couldn't be bothered with what was happening. I don't know if it was because he wasn't a Polish citizen and they didn't care. I don't know what it was, but I personally think that they're just like, oh yeah, no, we can't release those to you without Max's signature, just because they don't want to hand her evidence that she could use against them in the courts or use against them for lots of other stuff, expose them online. All right, let's talk about that black liquid that he was vomiting, right? The conspiracy theorists like to make it sound like it's some like extraterrestrial substance. They make it sound like it's this ooey gooey weird mysterious substance that he was vomiting. But let's read Monica's quote. This is what Monica actually described the vomit as, and I quote, "I noticed he had something in his mouth, some remnants of food, so I turned him on one side and saw gastric fluids pouring out of him, brown liquid, like somewhat tea-colored." I don't know if you noticed, but she didn't say black. She said dark substance, brown substance. I think later maybe she did describe it as black, but it was just so dark that it kind of looked black. Vomit is often brown. Vomit is often not a pretty color. But even if it was black, you know what black vomit might also be? That's completely logical explanation for this? Blood. He had pneumonia and he was overdosing. Totally possible that he had a bleed somewhere in his GI tract and it was causing some internal bleeding, and then he started throwing up the blood. Yes, vomiting blood can be bright red and look like blood. However, if the bleed is mixed in with your gastric fluids or if it's in the GI tract for a while, it starts to turn dark. It starts to turn that brown, that really dark brown, black looking color that happens when blood is oxidized. A lot of the times this is described as coffee ground emesis because it looks very much like coffee grounds. According to the Cleveland Clinic, with coffee ground emesis, the blood is not fresh or bright red. By the time your vomiting reflex was triggered, the blood had been in your GI tract long enough to begin to dry, congeal, and turn a darker color. So Occam's razor here, what is more likely? This is an alien substance. This is his assailants poisoning him with a weird supernatural goo, or he had an internal bleed because he was sick beyond belief and just started vomiting blood. I kind of already touched on this, but then the mark on his forehead that the BBC journalist claimed was in the pictures of Max's body, that kind of looks like a blood blister. Yes, that's odd, but again, it is impossible to say anything about that without actually seeing the pictures ourselves or having somebody actually give us a possible explanation for that. And also, remember, he had been decomposing for quite a while. I don't think it was taken right when he died. I think that was in the postmortem exam. And so if he was decomposing for days, like spots on the body could be anything, especially because they said he was unrecognizable. Who knows? And then his phone and his computer being wiped. This one is again tricky. Obviously, I can't say definitively why this happened. However, I can again kind of give you my opinion about what I think happened or what a logical explanation might be. Conspiracy theorists, of course, think that it was all wiped because he had evidence against the pedo ring or whatever it was that he was going to supposedly expose. And so they think that he got it wiped because they killed him and then deleted, the evidence that he had as well, because if they left that, it would have been pointless to kill Max. However, to me, I'm like, somebody super paranoid like Max clearly was, a conspiracy theorist who doesn't trust the government, doesn't trust any sort of authority figure. Is it possible he just encrypted everything on his computer and mom can't figure out where it is or how to actually get to anything? Is it possible that he just encrypted stuff and because his death wasn't dubbed like foul play or anything like that, like they don't think anybody else was involved, so they didn't look on his laptop for stuff. Like, they didn't actually investigate, because we also don't know how long afterwards mom got this stuff. The other thing that occurs to me that I can't help but think is that Max's mom is an older gal. She's like a senior, obviously. And I also have a hard time believing that she would know everywhere to look on the laptop. Like, what if she just didn't look in the right places and didn't know how to work the laptop and then didn't give it to anybody else to look at it? I don't know if that's what happened, but that's kind of what I think of. The SIM card in the phone just could have been lost, or they did start to look at it in the investigation and they forgot to put it there. They forgot to send it off, or somebody threw it away, or Max lost it before he died. It's just endless possibilities of what could have happened to this stuff. So we just don't know. Without any proof that he had evidence of crazy stuff that would expose all these people, I'm just not going to believe it. And then him allegedly going to give a talk about this secret ring that was harming children, and he was going to expose them all at the conference the next day. There are a couple conspiracies I believe in that are technically conspiracies, but I don't really think they are. I think they're often just like commonly accepted beliefs. And that is that, me personally, I don't think Epstein killed himself. Almost everybody who I ask agrees and says, like, I almost thought that was common knowledge. I don't think he killed himself either. And that is technically a conspiracy because we don't have actual proof of that. But, you know, there was a lot of people that wanted him dead. What is the difference between that and Max about to give this conference the next day? He was also about to give a talk, and then somebody comes in, and so the conspiracy theorists say that somebody comes in and killed him and made it look like something else, made it look like an accident. So people might be asking me, like, okay, how do you justify that then? What's the difference between that and the Epstein thing? Why do you believe that somebody killed Epstein, but you don't believe that somebody could have killed Max? And that's because for Epstein, there was proof of an actual ring. There was proof that Epstein, we all know there was actual evidence of all of this stuff that Epstein was the boss of, and all these heinous things that he was doing. There was actual proof of that. We know where he was doing it. We've literally seen the island, and we know of a lot of people that were likely involved. There's no proof that Max actually had information. Nobody can say what pedo ring he was talking about. Nobody can say anybody who was involved in this. Nobody could say where it was taking place, how he knew. We knew absolutely nothing about this.
Hi, Editing Hannah here. Just to be very, very, very clear, I am not comparing Max to Epstein, obviously. That should be obvious, but just in case it's not, I'm not saying that they are the same in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, Max was a much better person, but my point is that what they have in common is that both of them had secrets that they could expose to expose powerful people. But one of them, we have proof that there was actually something undercover going on. But for Max, we don't have any proof that this ring he was talking about was even real. Okay, that's it. Bye.
And given all the other seeming, in my opinion, delusions that he was having and all this other stuff he ranted about all the time that was just simply not true, that I'm so sorry, Max was not a super soldier. He wasn't altered in the womb. He was just mentally ill, in my opinion. If somebody came forward and showed what Max had actually supposedly found, which I can't believe he didn't tell Monica. I can't believe he didn't tell people about this big ring he was about to expose to other people in his life. So why can't they come forward and show us anything? Show us any sort of proof that he actually had anything concrete. If this was actually proven to be real, if there was actually any merit to his to this big thing that he was about to expose, then yeah, I would actually believe this more. But that's the problem, is that it's all so abstract. And that's why I believe about the Epstein conspiracy, because there's actual plausible evidence that that was likely the case. So that is what I think happened to Max. I don't think there was anything mysterious about it. I think it was tragic, but I think that he had some pretty awful mental health issues. I don't know what those are, and I'm not here to diagnose him, but I do think that he was suffering with some delusions, and being in the conspiracy theory circles, being a conspiracy theory journalist, and surrounding himself with only other like-minded people got him way more indoctrinated than if he had gone to a therapist or gone to a professional or a psychiatrist who could help him work through why he had all these beliefs and maybe get to the bottom of it. But instead, he went further into it and he surrounded himself and enveloped himself with other conspiracy theorists. So that was just feeding the delusions. It feels really strange to me that conspiracy theorists literally use Max to push their own agenda. They think we're disrespectful for not believing the conspiracies. Well, I think it's pretty disrespectful to make Max's death all about proof that your conspiracies and delusions are right. This is a real person who died and lost his life before he could even turn 40. And these conspiracy theorists have absolutely zero solid proof to back up any sort of claim that Max did not die in the way that the investigation said that he did. There's just no evidence. And as they say, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Conspiracy theorists are using something called a burden of proof fallacy, where their evidence for that they're right is basically telling us that, well, you can't prove that we're wrong. And no, that is not how it works. That is a burden of proof fallacy. It is not up to us to prove that you are wrong. You are the one making the claim that he died from all this conspiracy stuff, from these other crazy extraterrestrial or whatever entities. You're the one making that claim. You're the one that has to prove it. The burden of proof is on the person making the claim. And they can't. They have nothing. All they say is that, no, Max was a truth teller, and how dare you guys talk about him, and yada, yada, yada. Someday you're going to eat your words. Someday you're going to see that you're wrong. Okay? It's because they know they're wrong. They know that they have nothing, but they want to stay in their exclusive little club where they know more and they know better and they're more enlightened than the rest of us. Which, as you guys know, we've talked about that before, that I cannot freaking stand it when people think that they're just more enlightened than the rest of the world. It makes me so mad. But conspiracies and conspiracy theorists, this is what they do. This is harmful, and that is a fact. That is not up for debate. Hardcore conspiracy theories and conspiracy theorists are harmful and can be harmful to the people who believe it. I'm not talking about lighthearted conspiracies. Like, you could even argue that me talking about cryptids and paranormal stuff is me like talking about conspiracies. It's parallel, right? It's adjacent. I'm not saying that it's not fun to speculate about this stuff with your friends or talk about it. And I'm not completely anti-conspiracy theory. I believe in a couple conspiracies, like I said. So I'm really talking about hardcore conspiracy theorists here. Ones that make it their entire lives and will not believe absolutely anything outside of their random beliefs that they have no evidence for. The psychology of being a conspiracy theorist is that I know something you don't complex, like I kind of touched on. It's that thing, people often get sucked into it because maybe they feel like an outsider, maybe they feel ostracized for whatever reason, or just some reason they go down the rabbit hole and it makes them feel special. That is what it is. That is a fact. It makes them feel special. It makes them feel like they know more than the rest of the world and they're part of this exclusive club that knows the truth, and we're just all stupid little cattle that'll just believe anything and who can't think for ourselves. And the reason it's harmful is because they will believe their own weird beliefs and delusions with no evidence over thousands of doctors all agreeing on something, or experts agreeing on something. For example, conspiracies run and fuel a lot of the anti-vax rhetoric. That is a fact. And that anti-vax rhetoric literally kills people. Quite literally kills people. QAnon is also fueled by all kinds of conspiracy theories. And as we know, QAnon has also led to real life violence. But it can also just ruin your life. It can isolate you from your friends and family and people who love you. People that go down these rabbit holes and don't climb back out, like, it can consume them. I've seen it happen in my own life to somebody, and they start to neglect everything. They start to neglect their friends, their family, their spouse. They literally just they go to work, they come home, and all day and all night. Other than that, they're going down conspiracy rabbit holes on the internet and just being consumed by it. It's poison. And I'm not saying that if you have one doctor and every single little thing he says or she says is right. I'm not saying that there is not room for error. I'm saying when thousands and thousands and thousands of doctors and the entire reputable medical community as a whole agree on one thing because they're all educated in it, I think it's ridiculous that people don't believe it. Guys, my limited Christmas merch drop is out. If you want the horrible holiday merch with typology on the front and a little scene of elves taking revenge on Santa on the back, it was created by my artist Tim. Please check out his Fever link, which will be linked in the description as well. He's a great graphic designer, but these will only be available till about mid-December, and you have to order by December 7th if you want to get anything in time for Christmas. If you want to join the Patreon, I'm also doing the Iceberg over on Patreon. We have parts like 1 through 8 or 9 out now. There's hours and hours of content, and the next part will be out very soon this month as well. If you are interested in that, you have to be mid-tier or above. And just a heads up that it is available to watch via Dropbox or BitChute. I uploaded to those two places so people have different places to watch. It is not on YouTube because I'm uncensored in those videos. It's not graphic, but I get crass, and we are talking about, human adult stuff quite a bit is the entire point of that iceberg. And it's getting dark. We're getting down to the darker tiers, and it's getting a little scary over there. So if you want to catch up on that, that's on the Patreon, which will also be linked below. Thank you again to Zocdoc for sponsoring today's video, and that's what I'm going to leave you guys with. Thank you so much to all of the top tier patrons, and special shout out to our newest top tier alien patrons this week, and that is Lynn Chef Blur. Might be saying that wrong. Aaron Hates You and Unexpected Bread. I love all your usernames. Thank you guys so much for joining at the alien tier, and I'll see you all in the next one. Okay, bye.